Today we're going to talk about input and output on Linux and something called stream redirection. As you are already familiar, we can see the output of most of our actions on our command line on the screen. And we type most of our input from the keyboard. And in fact, there are three input-output standard streams that are associated on Linux. We have standard input, represented by an identifier, stdin, that is, by default, the keyboard. In the computer realm, it is identified as file descriptor 0. And the output comes in two flavors: standard out, or stdout, and standard error, or stderr. Those both go to the display and are represented in computer terms as file descriptors 1 and 2, respectively. Because it's easier to visualize in a picture, think of any process that you run at the command line, receiving its input via standard in, usually the keyboard, and its output as stdout, or file descriptor 1, going to the display, but could be intermingled with output from file descriptor 2, or standard error. The redirection part is typically effected with the redirections of a less than sign for input and a greater than sign to redirect output. And this will be easiest to see by way of some examples. So let's first look at an ls command where I am going to put in the name of a folder that I know does not exist on my system, followed by a folder that I know does indeed exist. And you can see that to my screen appears two slightly different kinds of output. The first line looks like a warning or error message, ls: cannot access / fake. No such file or directory. But that's followed by what looks like some useful information about the /etc/ppp folder, what looks like the contents of that folder. But say that I don't really like that intermingling. There are ways to redirect one of the streams or the other. So let us first take a look at redirecting standard error. What was the file descriptor for standard error? File descriptor 2. So let us redirect to my home directory into a file named error. We now see that to the screen, I am only getting what we'll call the useful display information. And now the error message has been hidden from the display. Let's take the reverse of that, and instead of redirecting the errors, let us redirect the regular output. Let us call that home directory and ls out. Now I see the error message, but I don't see the listing information. I can cat the file that I just created, and indeed the information has been saved to that file. There are a variety of reasons why we would want to split these channels or directions of information. Many of them occur when we write scripts and we want to save our informational message to one file and perhaps log errors somewhere else. There are possible reasons why we would want to redirect both outputs simultaneously, and that can be done. Let's refer back to our guide, and we can see that we can either specify a single file name, and then at the end of our command line, use this sort of awkward 2 greater than &1, or in Bash, there is a simpler syntax where we can just use greater than ampersand. So let us do that, and we can say the name of our file now, you'll just use the same thing, all output. And we can see that now no messages, either informational, warning, error, or data, come to my screen at all. They have all been redirected to the file name that I have specified. And of course, if you're interested, you can cat out the all output file to prove to yourself that that is indeed the new location. So I urge you to practice your own self, and that is the best way to keep yourself abreast of how these things work. We can also redirect input, as was previously mentioned, by specifying the name of the command and then using that left-hand sign and the input file. So we could grep for a name or a series of text and use as our input the etc password file, and that would find all the instances of the string DEBRAM in that file. Of course, certain commands allow files to be given as a command line parameter, and those would not be so interesting to use with file redirection, but there are other cases where we do want to take our input from a file rather than typing it in. So practice, and you will find that all of these commands become a lot more straightforward and a lot more easy to use and understand.